Hello and welcome to the Rippling Pages with me, Liam Bishop, curating the best writers to help you with your writing. Well, that's what I'm usually doing, but today I'm doing something slightly different. Over the years, I've been the one that's been asking the questions, but I thought it's about time that I answer some, and they're questions from you, the listeners. So yeah, it's a little bit different. I am sat here, it's Sunday morning, and I thought it's about time to go through some of the emails and pick out some of these questions that you've been asking me. You're going to learn a little bit about running the podcast. You're going to learn a little bit about some of the books that I've been reading and looking forward to this year or that have recently come out. And you're also going to learn a little bit about me. So it's a little bit new. It's all, probably not as swift and organised and efficient as the usual episode of the Rippling Pages. But whatever it represents, I'm super glad that you're here, that you're listening. Of course, if you enjoy this or any other episode, like, share, follow, subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the show. It really does help increase the outreach. So yeah, this is it. Let's get into it. I've got the questions here. Let's get stuck into them. Welcome to the Rippling Pages. Ask the host. This one is from, let's have a look, Gary. Gary is in Michigan. Hi, Gary, Michigan. Delighted to know that you're a listener to the show. And he has asked me, essentially, where I am from and where I run the podcast from. So that's an easy one. I can answer that. So I'm based in the north of England. You might be able to tell by the accent. And I guess in that respect, while this podcast isn't sort of necessarily restricted to northern writers and presses, I do try and keep my eye out for books and writers coming from the north of England. But it also feels like this is why I try to keep quite a sort of international emphasis on the show, or making it not restricted to any boundaries whatsoever. Because it feels like in some sense that I'm bringing writers to the north of England. Obviously, I'm not physically bringing them, but it feels like by being based here, it's creating a culture of sort of international outlook on literature. So my latest episodes with Vincenzo Latronico and Paula Oleg-Chirac, writers from Italy and Argentina. Even before that, Iris Mwanza, she was speaking to me from Zambia. So it's really quite this lovely feeling when you are connecting with someone who's in a different, country, continent, time zone sometimes. Recordings around different time zones. Thanks for that, Gary in Michigan. This one, I get asked this quite a lot. And this one is, who would you like to interview? That's from Alison. Alison is in Devon. Alison, thanks for the question. It's a great question, and it's a really hard one. And I think if you ask me this at any other time, you might get a different answer. There's so many writers. Some of the writers I've spoken, all the writers I've spoken to, I'm obviously really thankful and grateful to have spoken to, and I've got some great ones coming up too. Go back in time, dead writers, Virginia Woolf, living writers, Olga Tokarczuk, two writers who I find very fascinating and interesting. But I think pick a writer that's not with us anymore. And I think that would be someone like Montserrat Roche, who is the Catalan writer. And I really received this really slim copies of short stories through the post from Fum d'Estampa, the Catalan, the press that publishes a lot of literature in translation, a lot of Catalan. Song of Youth, and they were translated by Tiago Miller, who I've been lucky to have on the podcast actually. And I picked this up, and I get sent a lot of books, and I started reading it, and I just entered this fascinating world that seems so kind of contemporary but steeped in this sort of dream world and this language of sort of the conscious and the unconscious mind, and it also just sort of within this context of Francoist politics within Spain and these ideas of repression, and sort of throws back to sort of classical literature, some ideas around I thought it was reminiscent of sort of the way Chekhov used to write his sort of later stories, and really sort of speaking about women in Francoist Spain, and so I read these stories, and that was the first translation in English I think we had. Then Fum d'Estampa published, I think it was one of her early novels, Goodbye Ramona, and then last year Daunt's books published, The Time of the Cherries, another novel and another novel that I really enjoyed. Sadly, Roche died when she was quite relatively young, only 45 years old. But hopefully, we'll keep seeing more of these works come into light. Fans of Merche Rodeira, you'll really enjoy that, I think, as well. So that would be someone I would love to speak to. Thank you, Alison Devon, for that question. So I've got another question from Katya. Katya's not said where she's from, but that's not a problem. Katya's asked, what inspired the show and why did you start the show? Well, so I started doing this. I've always been interested in books. I've written about books, but the podcast itself. So I started this during the lockdown, but it just felt like a time when obviously we couldn't go to events, literary events. I love going to literary events. I love seeing writers speak about their work, and obviously there wasn't a chance to do this anymore. And I think when you go to a literary event, you feel like you are not obviously getting a chance to hear the writers, see them in the flesh, and hear them, and hear about their ideas for the books that they're talking about. But it also feels like you're supporting the literary culture as well. You're paying to be there. You're potentially buying books. You're an invisible presence, which is a really important thing. And I think that obviously was all stripped back during the pandemic. And I felt like I just wanted to continue supporting writers and continue being a platform for writing and writers to talk about their work, to talk about their craft, and connect with readers. And because that's what I started out as. I'm a reader and I love reading books. So I love that culture, the literary event, the chance to hear from writers, and then that's why I started it. I wanted to keep it going. I wanted to contribute to that, and I wanted to ensure that people were still getting the opportunity to listen to writers, to talk about their work, and I just never stop being excited by new books and new writing. Thanks, Katya, for your wonderful question. But I guess the thing to say is that just to add to that, actually, is that I'm not I'm not a podcaster. I learned to do a lot of these things. And if you are interested in perhaps starting your own podcast, there's a link in the show notes, and this is an affiliate link, and because I've been doing podcasting for a number of years now through Podbean. I get access to this link. So if you go through that link and you start your own podcast, I do receive a little bit of a commission. And I'm always honest about that, because I think any commission that I do make, because I think it's any kind of money that I generate from doing the podcast just goes back into the podcast. The website hosting, the tech upgrades, most of this is off my own time and through all my own funding. So if you are interested in looking at a podcast, then check out the link in the show notes. And this next one is, what have we got here? This one is from Will in East Kilbride, and he's just asked me for bless you, Will. You've just asked me for some book recommendations. What else am I looking out for? I mean, if the podcast recommendations aren't enough, but I'm always reading. I always get lots of books sent through as well. So what I might do is I might use this as a bit of an opportunity to say some books that have just been published or being published. This one's from Oluwaseun Olaiwola, the first poet to be published by Fitzcarraldo as part of their new poetry list. It's called Strange Beach. So as you'll know, Fitzcarraldo, famous for their blue and white covers, publish fiction and essays, but they're going into the poetry territory, and I really enjoyed this first edition. Olaiwola's collection it's a tender look at sort of sexuality and sort of how that relates to geography, as you might be able to indicate from the title. In terms of poetry, it comes across as quite formal, but then it morphs into something beguiling and strange, and with some really delicate and sometimes quite forceful imagery. It kind of plays on some old forms and some old kind of classic ideas, and with a modern contemporary look at sort of relationships and queer relationships. So that's just been released. That's out now. You can buy that now. I've also just finished Anthony Chaplin's Room Above a Shop. This is the Welsh writer's first novel, published by Granta. This is about two men and their relationship in a small village in Wales, but most of the action is confined to the shop and the village in which the book is set. It's a quiet book in the sense of it's a short book. It's written in very short fragments about these two characters, sort of really being very careful about how they approach their relationship. They've got to be careful about how and when their relationship gets out into the village, and how sort of Anthony writes about that and how he sort of talks about them, negotiating the spaces within the village and the shop. It really is quite beautiful and tender. I'm also reading Alice Chadwick's Dark Like Under. So this is about a school where a teacher dies, and the way Chadwick chooses to tell this story is really interesting. So she breaks down the times of this school day, and so each of the titles named after a time and kind of what's happening, and it starts from midnight when we first and lastly see this teacher, and through the course of the day you see the characters coming to terms with the death of this sometimes peripheral but sometimes crucial figure in their lives. We already had one International Booker Prize nominated author on the shortlist this year. We had Vincenzo Elettronica on, as I've said. But another book that I've been enjoying from the shortlist is Vincent Delacroix's novel Small Boat. It's really taken the list by storm. It's translated from the French by Helen Stevenson. I didn't know loads about Delacroix before I read this book, but it certainly made me eager to read more. He's actually a philosopher that specialises in Kierkegaard, and this comes from a fantastic introduction from Jeremy Harding, who's the publisher at Hope Road Publishing, and also, as you might recognise, from Peepaltree Press too. Essentially, what it's about is about a boat that's crossing over the Channel, and it's carrying migrants from France to the United Kingdom, and it ultimately ends up sinking, and it leads to the death of 27 people on board that boat. It's based largely on some of the accounts of the migrant crossings from France to... It's based on the perspective of the radio operator, a woman, at Cap Gris, which is where the boat set off from. And it's this internal tussle as she gets questioned by the police about her understanding of the migrants' plight, about how she tries to conceptualize it in her mind, and it makes you really uncomfortable at times because it's about her tussle morally with what's happened and her role in obviously the disaster. Finally, it's Ganek Jahel's weaving epic called Saraswati. This is his first novel. You've probably already heard Ganek Jahal's name already. He was the winner of the Galliabega Short Story Prize. He's won some other awards. He was named as one of the Observer newspaper's best debut novels of 2025. And it's from another publisher that I really have a lot of time for, which is Serpent's Tail. And it's this kind of weaving epic about this holy river that his thoughts were flown through Punjab. So the kind of premise is that people dismiss this river, the Saraswati, as a myth, but when the main character arrives back home in Punjab for the funeral of his grandmother, he finds some water in the dried up well of her house, and then it just launches into this big narrative epic. It's got all the shades of one of those, contemporary novels that sort of take over the kind of summer reading, and yeah, I can see it's going to hit. It's going to make a splash, so do give the pun. So yeah, thanks, Will, in East Kilbride, and there's some books that I've been reading and that I'm looking forward to coming out as well. Okay, let's go with one more, and this is from Faye in Leeds, which might very well be my sister, and she's asked me a very sweet question. Would I rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals? I mean, this is a podcast about books and writers, and I love translated fiction, so I'm afraid I think the easy answer would be to speak every language. I do try and learn languages, but a bit of a northern accent. My northern Leeds accent gets in the way sometimes. I mean, if I could speak to animals, perhaps I could open up a line of podcasts about animals, but I think it would have to be the languages. Thanks for that, Faye. Love that question. Well, yeah, that's it for now. I've got more, but maybe I'll answer some more of those in the future. Of course, if you have a question and you'd like it to be featured, when you leave a review on iTunes, that kind of thing, put in your question. It might feature on the show, or you can email me at ripplingpagespod@gmail.com. All the books that I've mentioned will be linked in the show notes. Otherwise, if you've enjoyed this, or in fact if you've enjoyed any other of the episodes, don't forget that I have a Rippling Pages bookshop. So it's not a real bookshop, but it's a bookshop that's hosted by bookshop.org, which is a website that all book sales are taken from independent booksellers. So I set up a shop for the podcast. The link is in the show notes. If you go in there, you'll see all the books from previous episodes. And this is great because if you buy a book from that shop, it'll come from an independent bookshop, so you'll be supporting the writer and the independent press. And again, I receive a very small commission, which goes back into running and supporting the show. So I'm grateful for that. But otherwise, just thanks for listening. Thanks for coming along. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about me, a little bit more about the podcast. And I'll be back soon with more writers helping you with your writing. Take care for now. Bye-bye.